And you really don't need to go to college to get a good liberal education. I'm doing a study with Benjamin Franklin right now, and
Wow.
one of the greatest contributors intellectually to our civilization. He didn't go to college, but there is a process that he developed on how to learn things. And I'm developing a program right now called Benjamin Franklin Forum, where you don't need to go to college to get this great liberal education. It's all sitting there on books in the library or on disk or online.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. It's mid-August, literally the midpoint of August, which means summer will soon be behind us. But this is a great time if you've got kids going to college, if you're worrying about how to pay for them, if you have relatives thinking of college, all of these things. You really need to hear from my next guest, Dr. Kuni Beasley. Dr. Beasley, hey, you've been helping people for over 40 years to reach their college goals. I assume things have changed quite a bit in the past 40 years, because 40 years ago, I went to law school, and I think it cost me a grand total of $15,000, not including accommodations, room and board. And I literally made back my tuition. I doubled the return on my investment in 6 months. And the rest is history, as they say. So things are a little bit different now, aren't they, Doctor?
Yeah. Well, 40 years ago, the average American family could average American family could buy their house, buy their 2 cars, and put their 3 kids to college on their salary without loans.
Yeah. Now your average drug czar can't even do that.
Yeah. Well, man, if they talk to me, they can do that. Okay. That's
Okay.
what we focus on. We have a lot of strategies on how to take the pinch out of the cost of college.
Right. So I see, like, since 2011, you said you and your team have helped students get over $300 million in scholarships and grants for all of the best schools. Hey, but not everybody is supposed to go to Harvard or Yale, are they?
No, there's plenty of good schools out there. A lot of people try to place a little too much vanity on schools, and are willing to pay the vanity premium for a school. And a lot of the vanity schools, your ROI will never reach zero. Okay,
Yeah.
you're going to be in a negative ROI for the rest of your life most of the time.
Right, especially if you don't bother to graduate.
That's right. That's 60% of the students don't make it, and so
Hey,
all they have is some college credit and a lot of college debt.
I hate to go back in the day when I went to school, but we
Hmm.
had these things, we called them perennial students,
Hmm.
and they just kept grinding through, generating tuition and fees
Hmm.
for the institution, but they never got the benefit of an education. Now, uh, I think people realize that's not really a great course, but hey, if you've entered college and you stayed there
Hmm.
for, like, say, 2 years, a year and a half, you could have amassed enormous debt, and then
Yeah.
you drop out. You're still responsible for it. There's no
Hmm.
guarantee that you only have to pay back if you graduate here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, most of the college debt, or not, I'm going to say most, a significant portion of college debt is held by people who did not finish college.
Mm. So another interesting thing is, even people who do graduate from colleges, if you go to the wrong college and take the wrong thing, the statistics are online. I don't.
Well,
Somebody
well, I
once gave me the database, but I
well,
would, right?
no, I'm gonna crash that one.
Well,
Okay.
but when you look at the average earnings, this database, average earnings
Yeah.
of graduates from every college in the
Hmm.
country, and then percentage that have defaulted on their student loan debt, and it's kind of shocking. So does it always benefit you to go to college?
Well, it depends. Statistically, it says that you're going to make more money going to college as a norm. If you're in the midline band, yes, okay. But some of your richest people, your Bill Gates and your Stephen Jobs, and those people, they dropped out. A
Zuckerberg.
lot. Yeah, Zuckerberg. You've got a lot of people who were very entrepreneurial. I mean, I go from the fact that I have 2 doctoral degrees. There's a lot of people who make a lot more money than me, don't have college degrees. I mean, my mother was an immigrant from Japan, couldn't read or write English, and died a millionaire. Okay, so there's a lot of ambition, action, doing the work
Yeah.
that counts for that. So it's good to have a college degree, but not necessarily required. I mean, I also follow Mike Rowe's perspective. You've got a lot of trades that make a lot more. The average plumber makes more money than your average family practice doctor.
Yeah, dirty jobs. Hey,
yeah,
look, who did graduate from college and did get an advanced degree? Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk,
right,
but he stopped. Once he realized that he had reached his potential and gaining education, he dropped out of a PhD program and went to business.
Right, but point being that this romanticized notion of I'm in college, I'll drop out, and I'll become the next Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. It's disingenuous.
I hear that a lot because, they'll say, Zuckerberg didn't do it, Stephen Jobs did. I say, okay, then let me go to your garage and see where you got the next Apple computer. Are you building it? Okay, let me go look at your software that you developed. Okay, some of these people they were gifted, and a lot of the people, for example, a lot of people that went to the Zuckerbergs and people who went to Harvard. Harvard attracted them because they weren't looking to make them smarter. They were looking to keep them there for 4 years, and then as they launch in their career, they would be part of the Harvard legacy. Because a lot of colleges will recruit based on legacy, that this kid has promise and is going to be a donor later.
So here's a question for you, Doctor. What is the purpose of a college education?
Well, it's multi. Number one, a lot of people go to college just to enlighten their intellectual capacity. Mike Rowe will admit to that. He's got a degree in philosophy. Some people go because they need a technical background. If you're going to be an engineer, you need to go to college. Okay. If you're going to be a doctor, you're going to need to go to college. You're going to be a dentist, you need to go to college.
You got to do it for STEM.
You got to, and business, if you're going to get certifications in business, if you're going to be an accountant, you need to go to college. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you don't need to go to college. In fact, I tend to think that if you are really an entrepreneur, college may be a hindrance.
Yeah, I can see your point there. I'm a 4th generation entrepreneur, but I also went to law school and did other stuff. But so the concept
in my case, none of my. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I've never busted anybody, never wrote a parking ticket.
Too bad.
I have a master's in business, and I got that because I was leaving the service, and I needed to have some sort of credentials that re-enter the business world. Ironically, when I went to the business world, I was hired for what I did in the Army, not because I had an MBA. And then my first doctorate is in Greek and Hebrew. Nobody's asked me to be their rabbi. My second doctorate is in urban and second one is in urban and public administration. No one's asked me to be their mayor. So academically, I'm a failure.
All right. So
22 years of college down the drain.
Did you catch that story? It was like right around the time of the financial collapse. This guy had gotten he went back to college, went into debt, and he got a degree in puppetry. And then he was outraged because he couldn't find major career opportunities in puppetry. I guess Sesame Street didn't want him.
I don't remember that story. I don't know where you get a degree in puppetry.
So what about useless degrees?
Well, there's no degrees that are quote unquote useless. You may have high expectations for some. Women's studies is not a degree that you get expecting to make a lot of money out of. Some of the foo-foo degrees, but again, a lot of people don't go into the field of their degrees unless you're in a technical field. Most people don't go into their degree field, except maybe if you're in business or communication or something like that. I mean, again, I'm in this field. Of all things, I've taught in 14 different areas at the graduate level. Some of them have been in business, but I've never taught a course in criminal justice. I have taught a course in Greek, and I have taught public administration. But by and large, my business now has nothing to do with my degree fields, other than the fact that I managed to go to college 22 years and only pay for one semester.
Which is pretty good. So the idea of becoming more worldly better rounded person, liberal education, when it actually meant something. My daughter, she wound up going to BU and took to the College of General Studies, and she complained for 2 years that she had to stay there, but she learned how to write and really read with purpose, all these things. So sometimes you think you're learning something that's a real pain, but it really is the best thing you could have done.
Yeah. And you really don't need to go to college to get a good liberal education. I'm doing a study with Benjamin Franklin right now, and one of the greatest contributors intellectually to our civilization. He didn't go to college, but there is a process that he developed on how to learn things. And I'm developing a program right now called Benjamin Franklin Forum, where you don't need to go to college to get this great liberal education. It's all sitting there on books in the library or on disk or online.
Yeah, it's all there. I mean. I missed out on a bunch of classic books when I was growing up in school, high school and such. Some of them I didn't read. I just wasn't into it. And I went back and read those books. Sometimes I did them audio books. And so the concept, though, I find in America, I think many of you out there think that just because you graduate from college or graduate school, you're done learning. Isn't it true, though, that all going to school does is give you the tools to find out what you need to learn once you get out into the job market?
Yeah, that's one of the purposes of going to college is you get the tools to read, you get the tools to learn how to write. I mean, I remember I was teaching a political science class, and I was requiring the students turn in a monograph each class period. And I had this girl come up and complain and says, "Why are we writing all these papers? I thought this was a government class, not an English class." And I said, "Young lady, you take composition so that you can write papers for the other classes." And a lot of people who go to college really don't have a concept of what they're really supposed to gain out of college. I didn't gain that until I was in my PhD program.
Same here. Well, my thing wasn't serious till I took a semester off. I was ill. I came back and I went to night school, and I was surrounded by all these students who, most of them, first one in their family to go to college, and they were going to college to get a degree, whether it was accounting or whatever, to further improve their career and job prospects. And they were so much more serious than the day students.
That's right.
That it was just a much more intellectually stimulating environment, even though they had worked a full day of work, and now they were in school trying to get ahead.
Yeah, that's what I did. I mean, when I got my master's degree, I was on active duty in the Army. I went to school at night, and there was 7 of us who doubled up. We finished our MBA in 50 weeks. We doubled up, worked together, got through it, went to school at night, and then for the rest of my graduate degrees, I always went to school at night. Again, you're there with more serious people. The day students were, tended to be still a little more collegey, if you want to use that word. Yeah, not so much partiers, but they didn't take it as seriously. But the guys at night, I remember some of my public administration class I was sitting there with assistant city managers from Dallas, director of the DART system. I mean, there were some pretty heavy hitters. I'm chief of police for one of the suburbs. So, but these people were serious about learning this and getting a better education.
Yeah. Hey, I remember
improving their prospects.
In law school, I had a guy, he was the head of the Army Corps of Engineers for like New York State and the whole Northeast. He was a general. And he said, I'm going to law school because most of the problems I have now have nothing to do with engineering. It's all legal. And therefore, that's why I'm here. He was pretty amazing. So, so how do you get to go to school for free?
Well, it's very simple. First thing we look at is metrics. That's grades, test scores, class rank. Okay, and I want to expel this myth about test optional. Okay, except for the state schools in California, it is still important to get good test scores. I don't care what they say. People are using this as an excuse to blow off test scores. But the common data set, that's the data set that all the colleges report in, that if your test scores are in that middle 50% band of what they have, that your prospects of being admitted are half again better if you have test scores in that band. That's just the statistics. So the people sit there and try to poo-poo this. Now, what happens with these test optional things, particularly when you're doing high profile schools, your Stanfords and your Princetons and stuff. Uh, they now have a lower acceptance rate because the number of people who applied have doubled. The same number of people get in, but the percentage goes down because you've doubled the number of people who are not sending in test scores. They're applying on a wing and a prayer, and it becomes a. I mean, I think one of the colleges said their revenue increase was $7 million on application fees because so many more people are doing the wing and the prayer bit, and they think that there's an easy way to do it. We don't have to do tests. I mean, I've had to deal with heads of prep academies, and they said, "Well, we don't need to do tests." Well, yes, you do. They're not keeping up with the information, so test scores are important. I mean, and if you and 85% of the colleges in the country will admit you and scholarship you on metrics alone. I mean, University of Alabama, a 3.5 and a 32 ACT will get you $112,000 in scholarship money automatically.
Wow, that's remarkable. Well,
yeah.
So, yeah, this whole thing of getting rid of the tests, I just think is wrong.
Yeah.
Look, tests. There's a reason they give tests.
Yeah,
right?
you got to have a common denominator because with all the grade inflation that goes on and the weighted GPA stuff there's no way of figuring out if somebody is really ready for college. And the tests aren't the best thing you can do, but that's the best thing that we have right now. And SAT scrambling right now with their new test. I'm not a big fan of the SAT. I lean more to ACT, but it's a more legitimate test.
Yeah, well, it's just like IQ test. There is no better predictor of success in life than IQ tests, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth of the matter. And all tests indirectly reflect IQ, don't they?
In a sense, yes. Okay. But you can't say that I can raise, because I help somebody raise their SAT score 400 points. I don't necessarily help them raise their IQ. I've taught them how to, let's say, beat the test, which is what I really do. I don't teach people math, reading, or grammar or whatever on the test. I teach them how to beat the test using inductive and deductive reasoning. I do this for the LSAT, the MCAT, the DAT, all of the other tests, GRE. You can beat these tests.
Oh yeah, I know. Like originally, I took the LSATs, and I thought I'm not a good test taker. And this is back when the scores were in the hundreds. I got 550. I spent the summer at Stanley Kaplan. He was one of the first LSAT guys in New York City. And I went up to 700. And I don't think I got that much smarter, but I knew the hacks. I knew what to expect and to not get phased by the test, not let the test psych me out.
That's right. That's right. I mean, my daughter was the top scorer at University of Texas at Arlington. She was the top LSAT scorer. I ran the numbers on that. 242 people scored higher than her on the LSAT, and then 45,000 people took the LSAT that year.
Remarkable.
And it was just getting being able to hack the test.
Yeah. So test taking is a whole art in itself, and unfortunately, from my education, and I went to pretty good public schools, they didn't really ever teach us how to take tests.
But most of them don't. SAT test is primarily, just take practice tests. Well, if you just take practice tests over and over and over again, you're going to get the same result over and over and over again. That's a definition of insanity, right? You've got to have a system of correcting your errors, learning from them, and developing techniques on. Well, for example, we teach our students to answer the reading passages without doing the reading, and how to do math is 60 to 70% of the math can be done with inductive and deductive reading without having to crunch numbers.
Right. Hey, I just remember I took a real estate test in California a number of years ago. And granted, I was a lawyer for 30 something years, but I was by far the oldest person in that room. And I had done minimal studying. I did some. I won't say I didn't. I took it cold. But I did minimal studying as the first person out of there, out of that room in less than an hour and passed it. So, it's really because I knew how to take the test.
You have test maturity, you had experience, you have intelligence. You're always going to do better when you have that. But I also help people take the insurance licensing exams and whatever they need to take a test on. I teach them how to psych the test and beat the test.
Yeah, well, it's amazing when you get into a mindset where the test psychs you. I mean, I hear people in Florida here 6, 7, 8 times they took the real estate exam and failed. And I'm not saying it's an easy test by any stretch, especially if you have no experience with law and real estate transactions. Not an easy test, but 30,000 people in Palm Beach County managed to pass it. And a lot of them have not a clue what they're doing. So
Yeah.
interesting. So when you're doing test prep, what's the most important thing you think?
Well, it's actually dedicating the time and doing proper test prep. Now we follow a very strict process. Is we have you take the test untimed, okay? Because we don't try to do the timing and learning test taking techniques, because it's like trying to change a tire with a car's wheels. It's not a very good strategy. So first we'll get good, and then we'll get fast. So we have them go through it. Now we train them on all the little hacks, how to understand. Oh, look at the last digit, or look for semicolons and periods and things like. There's little hacks that you do,
right?
And then they take the test, and then they go back and they would do what's called a critique on all of the answers they got wrong. They reverse engineer the answers, and then they go back and they said, okay, I answered A. A is incorrect. I took A because, and you want to erase that neural pathway in your brain that got you that bad answer. And then you say, this is what I should have done to get the correct answer. And what you do is you bore a new pathway. So when you see that similar question again, you're going to get it right. Well, we have them take the same test 3 times. Now, there was a study done that they took 2 groups of people. One group took an SAT, the same test, test 1 once, test 1 twice, test 1 3 times. And another group took test 1, 2, 3. And then they gave test 4. The group that did the same test 3 times scored higher on test 4, because after a while, they were able to recognize the patterns that were involved. They were able to observe. And some people, once you get to that point, you're able to look at the question, figure it out real quick, and intuitively get the correct answer using inductive and deductive reasoning. And that's what we teach them to do. And we have them repeat this with 3 tests. And then we work on timing.
So I assume you do a lot of this online now.
It's all done online. We say, one of the things that we do is we tell them, Mark, if you're using a paper test, mark your answers in the test booklet, and then at certain points, you transfer your answers in batches. It reduces coding error, and depending on the length of the test, you'll save 3 to 5 minutes. So they're going back and forth, having to reorient every time you transfer your answer, you transfer in batches. It's simple as that.
One thing I find so interesting is the contrast between like an SAT or an ACT and a state licensing test. Your goals are totally different there. The SAT, LSAT, whatever, you want to get the highest score you possibly can achieve and get every point. In the licensing test, all you want to do is get 70 or 75. You just want to pass.
You just want to pass.
And it's so different. Like, because I'm studying the real estate exam, and I'm getting upset because I'm not getting over 90%. And I should be doing better than this, And then I said, well, wait a second, 90, I'll still pass it because you only need 70 or 75. And I realized I was focusing on the wrong priorities here.
Yeah. Well, the difference also is that your real estate exam is content oriented. You have to know the material. Okay. Yeah. You can't cipher through that test. Whereas SAT and ACT, they're aptitude based, and you can cipher through the test. If you learn to do the proper test taking techniques, you'll raise your score. So it's not so much content. I mean, you have to know your basic math functions, and you have to know basic grammar.
Right.
You're not there. Your grammar is not being tested. Your ability to cipher through your grammar is being tested.
Yeah, and then they've got all those like little trick questions that they ask to trip you up. And those follow a distinct pattern too, don't they?
Yeah. Well, ACT is notorious that. SAT is notorious for that. ACT doesn't have a lot of trick questions, but that's how SAT makes its questions more difficult. Is they put more trick questions in, and not so much that it's a higher level math or something, but they'll put it. And so we show them the different types of questions. We have what's called the bonehead answer or the landmine answer. Sucker answer, things like that they put in there. So we make sure that students can recognize these up front.
I remember, maybe it was the bar exam. They said, there's one question that you will see that you always know, the answer to. And that is they will give an example. And then one of the things will be, this is an example of the doctrine of the fruit of the poisonous tree, theory. And you always knew instantly, because nobody knew what the fruit of the poisonous tree theory was, but it was always in there. And I guess it's the same in all. They just put in those standard questions to trip you up. And once you see it, you smile, and that helps improve your confidence too. Hey, confidence with test taking is everything, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. And plus, when I tell people, how do I prepare for a test in college? And I go, you have to know the material. Okay. So I go back to Mr. Miyagi. Best block is not be there. Okay. Best way for an academic test is know the material. There's no, there are certain test taking techniques you can do to make sure you don't screw up and make fewer mistakes. But if you're taking an English exam, you have to know the material. If you don't know the material, there's no substitute for knowing the material.
Yeah, I remember with courses, like, I'd look at I'd go to the back of the chapter and look at the questions first before I did anything. And then I would pay very close attention to what the teacher said and trying to figure out what questions they were going to ask on the exam. So that way it was a lot easier. I didn't have to go through learning a bunch of stuff that wasn't necessarily productive.
Well, we have a course that's called Learning Dynamics on how to do that, how to take notes, how to take book notes, how to take class notes, and where they overlap, where your questions on the test are going to be. And if you know the questions on the test, or you write questions that are tougher than the questions on the test, then you're going to know the material. That's we have an entire process on how to read, study, test, and write better, faster, and easier. And if people use this system, we've had kids take off. I've had kids graduate from high school as young as 13. I've had people graduate from college as young as 16. I had 19-year-olds get into med school. I had an 18-year-old sit for the California bar.
Amazing.
And these are not typical kids, but they were very ambitious barn burner kids, and they were suffocating in a conventional school environment.
Understandable. I know that feeling quite well. And all right, so hey, just tell us how we connect with you, how we find out more about what you're offering here, and hopefully get a piece of that scholarship and grant pie.
Yeah, well, they can contact me at Beasley College Prep. It's Beasley, BeasleyCollegePrep.com. Depending on how much bandwidth we have, I will, and your participants here, we will give them a free consult to show them, what they need to do. And we're not here to make a sales pitch. We're here to help people. And, we'll tell them what they need to do. And if there's a place that we can help them. Now, we can help just about anybody, but, a lot of times we can tell people to do and make a good decision, and they can proceed with it. And that's what we're looking to do.
Excellent. Well, hey, we appreciate you coming on, Doctor. Hey, the link is in the show notes on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And make sure when you're there, you sign up for your free newsletter. Got a question for Dr. Beasley or myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll get you an answer quick. Hey, Doctor, appreciate you coming on, and keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.